Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast on CHSN. We are brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. We're Charlie Roumeliotis. I'm Pat Boyle. Charlie, how you doing today?
What's going on? A little better than the Blackhawks offense the other night, but we'll make do.
You know, we've seen that movie before. Blackhawks on their third West Coast road trip in just over 5 weeks, which is insane. If you just did that and didn't play hockey, like you just traveled to the destinations that they went over the last 5 weeks, you'd be exhausted. That being said, it was another sleepy performance where the Hawks, right now, they only have 3 even strength goals over their last 4 games. They weren't winning puck battles. They struggled to get through the neutral zone. They weren't getting in on the forecheck, not playing with desperation like we saw in the Ryan Donato goal, which, oh, by the way, he leads the team in goals with 8 now. And your thoughts on the offense and kind of where it's at and maybe what some of the answers could be, Charlie?
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's been a theme over the last few games of the Blackhawks not really going into the high danger areas and generating many chances. I was looking through the first 40 minutes of hockey against Seattle. The Blackhawks had 9 shots on goal. 6 of the 9 shots came from defensemen, and 8 of the 9 shots came from 41 feet or out. There was just nothing inside the dots. I think the only higher quality scoring chance was a Teuvo Teravainen snapshot from, I think, like 25 feet out. And, credit to the Blackhawks. They pushed in the third period like we've seen them do in previous games. Both of the Dallas games, we saw third period push against San Jose that one game, and they did everything but score. So credit to them for finding ways to push in the third. But it's hard for me to understand why the third period effort can't be translated into the first 2 periods, especially given the Blackhawks hadn't played a game since Sunday. So right. They should have been well rested. Legs should have felt fresh. So it's just unfortunate that they didn't find a way to turn in a better effort against the Seattle Kraken team that going into Thursday's game, they scored the first goal of the game only 4 times all season. And so it was kind of there on a silver platter for the Blackhawks to get off to a good start. And unfortunately, they didn't do that.
Luke preaches getting in on the forecheck and setting up the offense through that. They're struggling to do that. They're shooting the pucks in. Pucks are going to the trapezoid. Goaltenders are so good these days at playing the puck. They're thwarting the forecheck before it even has an opportunity to set up. So, you need to do a lot of cross-slashing support to get to those areas. You need to do soft dumps or hard rims. What are you seeing on the lack of production? Like we saw a perfect example of it against the Minnesota Wild. Vlasic rimming one in. They win a puck battle along the board, and Dickinson comes off the boards, makes a move, and puts it in the back of the net. Like, this team can do that. I don't understand why we don't see it more on a consistent basis.
Yeah, so Troy Murray was on this from the second period and on last night of the Hawks' dump-in attempts were very poor. They were going straight to Joey Decord and easy exit. Like there were, Troy was saying on the broadcast, he was like, there's no purpose behind the dump-ins. Like there's no plan as to where they're going. Is it going to be in a corner? Who's going to be the first guy? And I just felt, and it was funny to hear the locker room say that. I think Nick Foligno was talking about it after the game, saying we didn't do a good job of dumping the puck in. And so even they felt it too. And so I remember, I think it was a few games ago, was it Seth Jones? Someone had talked about how the Blackhawks need to do a better job in targeting specific areas.
Paul Bissonnette made a big point when they were on that Wednesday night game against Detroit, how, his coach in the AHL said, you put a puck into the trapezoid, that's a turnover.
Mm.
And they were doing that time and again in the Detroit game, and it's carried over over the last several games.
And was it Wayne Gretzky too that was sharing a story? Now this was pre-trapezoid era, but he was saying when they played Ron Hextall in the playoffs, he's like, we would dump it to his backhand so he wouldn't have to, So I don't know if there's a scenario, if there's a, I'm trying to think of if the Blackhawks, Joey Daccord, left-hander, do they dump it to the left-hand side and make him, kind of ring? I don't know. But
yeah, I think the key is not getting it to the trapezoid. Like Troy was mentioning to you, soft chips, short of the trapezoid, or hard rims past it, or some other strategy. But it's either a soft or a hard rim.
Right. Soft into the corners or hard, like in the glass. So the goaltender can't.
And that was the Vlasic one against Minnesota that went hard around the net, rimmed around the glass.
Yeah. And, yeah. And is that the one where Donato almost had the chance where Joey Daccord misplayed it? Or there was another one that was early in the game where Joey Daccord misplayed the puck and it was like, just hit a weird carom. So it's like just stuff like that where the Hawks could capitalize. They were a half a step away from scoring the first goal.
And that's just desperation, right? That's just what you were talking about. Like, we see glimpses of it. We see stretches of it. That's the part I don't understand why we don't see it more. And it seems to be we don't see it more against teams that are kind of in the same category as the Black. Like, they seem to have more sustained, desperate play against the better teams. And then a team like Seattle, who is relatively in the same spot they are in the standings, you got to pull it out of them and wait for the third period, or wait till they got down 2-0 to have that quick response to make it 2-1.
Yeah, this is like playing armchair psychology here. Like, it feels like when they play the Edmontons, the Winnipegs, the Colorados, psychologically, that if you're not on your A game, that other team has the chance to embarrass you, right? And so there's like this heightened focus that every shift matters. Whereas if you're playing a team like San Jose or Seattle or Anaheim, not to say you can win with your B game, but it feels like, okay, they're kind of on our same level. We don't need to have the same. And it's the wrong mentality. I'm not saying the Hawks are guilty of that, but that's just what it feels like just watching the games where it's like, how can they go beat an Edmonton team and beat a Colorado, but then look so poor against teams like Seattle and San Jose in that one game in San Jose for the first 40 minutes where it was just like, who is this hockey team and what happened to the team that beat the Edmontons?
So let's talk about Connor Bedard. It's now 8 games, right? Without a goal. He was with Kurashev and Tabo last night. That line only had 3 total shots on goal. I think Connor had 2, or did he have 1?
I think he had 1. Yeah.
He had 1. Tabo had 2, and Kurashev had none. There were, like you talked about, a lot of shots from distance, missed shots in that game. I think there were 11 total. And there were, a lot of block shots as well. Block shots were 11 for, so there were 10 missed shots, 11 block shots, and there just wasn't a lot of shot attempts in all. We were at practice on Wednesday before they left for Seattle. And we saw Connor at times on the left wing with Kurashev centering and Tabo on the right side. And then we talked to Luke about it afterwards. And then when we were in Seattle, we saw them go back to Connor at center. What did you make of that? I mean, did we just see something that we miscalculated?
Well, it's funny because Ben Pope had texted me. It was Friday morning when they did line rushes at morning skate in Seattle and saying, hey, it looks like Connor is at the center position. And, and I was like, well, I'm positive I saw Connor on the wing at practice, but the drill was a little weird. It looked like more of a forecheck drill where they were stressing the F1. So I think they did 3 go arounds, and on the first one, Kurashev was the center on the first line. It was Foligno on line 2 was the center, Dickinson line 3, Reichel line 4. On the second go around, it was Bedard in the middle for line 1, Hall for line 2, Donato for line 3, and I think it was Maroon for line 4. So in my mind, that's when I tweeted out the lines, because I'm like, well, the first go around was clearly the centers playing the F1 in that drill, and the second go around were the wingers. So I don't know if it was a change or if it was just like, hey, Kurashev is going to be taking the faceoffs on the left side, Bedard on the right side, and maybe they were just prepping for both. But I mean, I saw it correctly. I just don't know I don't think it was a pivot by the Blackhawks. I think they were just kind of preparing for both scenarios. So I'm not sure.
And to that point, Luke said afterwards, after Wednesday's workout and before they left for Seattle, he said, like, yeah, they're trying to take some of the defensive pressure off of Connor, and that we may see him go back to center. And he was referring to Thursday night at times. So, like, this wasn't going to be some permanent thing. It was just something they were experimenting with. But I had NHL insider Frank Saravalli on the CHSN Blackhawks Countdown show on Thursday and asked him what the team's view is of possibly having Bedard slide to the wing. And he spoke to the team about this, and here was his response to that.
The Blackhawks feel like he's been chasing a little bit too much defensively and expending too much energy. So the idea would be to have Kurashev do some of the dirty work there and help get the puck on Bedard's stick more quickly, then allowing him some extra time to get out of the zone and use that speed. So it's all designed to really free him up. And I think the big thing that we might see, we saw a little bit of this last year at times too. You're probably going to even see Bedard continue to take faceoffs and then transition to the wing during the play and basically be a center in the offensive zone, but in the defensive zone play on the wing. And so it's all designed to just try and get him going.
So it's definitely something they're thinking about, Charlie, about trying to take some of that D-zone pressure off of Connor and his responsibilities there. Do you see that as something we could see here in the next few games, or do you think by and large we're going to see him stay at the center position?
Yeah, I would explore it, and maybe it's kind of one of those things where you throw him out at the center position during line rushes, but that in the game you kind of move him to the wing, so you're not bringing attention to it, right? Whereas if we're at practice and we're tweeting, wow, Bedard is on the wing, and then we have to go ask him about it, and then it's kind of a bigger deal. So maybe I can see a scenario. Like, I felt like I was watching the game last night, and there were times where I saw Bedard kind of move into the left side. So yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I wouldn't be opposed of the Blackhawks trying it, simply because previously when Bedard was at the beginning of his goal drought, he was still getting chances, right? Mm-hmm. The last few games, though, he has not gotten those. And, I wrote it down that he had 1 shot on goal versus Detroit. He had 2 shots on goal versus Minnesota. And by the way, he logged 16 minutes and 40 seconds of ice time against Minnesota in an overtime game. And that was the fewest ice time he had in this all season. And then he had 1 shot on goal against Seattle yesterday. And he had 0 shots going into the final couple minutes. And his first shot was a minute and 32 seconds left in regulation. So he almost went the whole game without a shot. And I looked this up. Last year, Bedard only went 4 times without a shot on goal in a game. Wow. One of those was New Jersey, which he fractured his jaw in the first period. So I don't even really count that. So it was basically 3. Yeah. So that's where, we were looking at Connor prior to the Detroit game, and he was generating chances. But the last 3 games, he has just 4 shots on goal in 3 games. And that's where I'm like, okay, maybe you got to shake something up, because the power play is not clicking, and neither is Bedard at even strength. So that's where I would start to lean into maybe freeing him up offensively by moving him to the wing, just temporarily if it has to be.
Hey, one other interesting thing came out of the conversation with Frank Saravalli, and it's about backup goalie Laurent Brossoit. Again, the timeline on his return from meniscus surgery is still unknown right now. We saw him back on the ice with the team, but he didn't travel to Seattle and Vancouver. So here's Saravalli on how Brossoit's injury timeline is important, big picture to this team.
Well, you saw Brossoit back on the ice at practice, which was a nice step forward as he's dealing with this meniscus injury in his knee. And the lengthened timeline has certainly not caught the Blackhawks by surprise. They knew that it might take him a bit of time to get comfortable, but the clock is ticking a little bit in the sense that Arvid Soderblom, who's actually had a really good year for the Hawks, following a season in which they only got 5 wins from their backup goalie all year. His numbers have been fantastic, but Soderblom has just 6 games played remaining until he will require waivers. So in a perfect world, the Blackhawks are certainly keeping an eye on this. They don't want to have to put Soderblom on waivers or make some other sort of transaction. In a perfect world, Brossoit, one of their big free agent signings last summer, will be back before Soderblom plays those 6 additional games, so they can then just send him back to Rockford to continue playing without the need for waivers. But that's all predicated on Brossoit feeling good, and he's a little bit of ways away from that.
So, yeah, I wasn't calculating Arvid Soderblom's situation as far as him being 6 games away from having to go through waivers when he's sent down. Still plenty of time. Like, I don't see him probably touching that threshold here. But if we go couple more weeks, say, it could be something that, you know, if you get to 4, that he might get sent down to Rockford and somebody else may come up to get that spot start on a back-to-back, just so you don't have to, because I don't think he would clear waivers. I think somebody would grab him.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, it would, or you run into a situation where you have to play Mrazek a little bit more than you would like to, because you're trying to delay the Brossoit return. You know, so yeah, I honestly totally forgot about that threshold. Like going into the season, I don't think it ever crossed my mind, because I don't think we ever had expected that he would be playing this late into, you know, mid-November so far. But yeah, definitely something to keep note of if you're the Blackhawks, because I agree, if he has to go through waivers to get to Rockford, I think he would. Well, here's the thing. I think he would be claimed. I think he would be claimed, but it would have to be to a team that could use him on the roster right away, because you can't claim a goaltender and then throw him down in the minors. Like, you have to play him in the NHL. So I would have to really look situationally at the other team's situations. But yeah, it's definitely something to monitor as we go closer to that threshold.
Got a cool moment coming up tomorrow night in British Columbia as Connor Bedard returns to Vancouver for the first time as an NHL player. Wasn't able to play there last year because of the broken jaw. And we got a chance to talk to him before he left. And you could tell, you know, again, he doesn't love media scrums to begin with, certainly when you're asking him about the different line mates and goal droughts and whatnot. But he did seem to perk up when we started talking about the opportunity for him to go home. And it's a very Bedard-like, you know, off night before the game. He's going to go to the home he grew up in, that he used to shoot pucks in the driveway. He's going to have some family and friends over. Mom's making dinner. And I don't know, maybe he should go out in the driveway and shoot a little bit, find that mojo.
Yeah, it's going to be nice for him. And the Hawks have an off day today too, so he'll be able to kind of spend the day there at home and not have to navigate his schedule around practice and rushing back to spend some quality time with family. So I'm excited. I like what Luke Richardson said after the game yesterday, saying, you know, is this homecoming coming at a tough time for Connor because he's on an 8-game goal slump? And Luke was like, man, might be coming at a perfect time, because maybe he has some extra jump in his game, and it would be nice for him to break that get the monkey off his back at home, and maybe he'll have a little bit of extra motivation to try to pepper some shots to the net and break through his 8-game goal slump.
I was trying to find out the number of tickets that Connor had to secure for this. So I'm because I thought I remember hearing that, they were going to get a box before last season. I don't know if that's the case this time around, but he did say he was going to have to pay to play tomorrow night in Vancouver. Said that jokingly, but it should be an awesome scene. I think he thrives in these areas. I think he thrives when the stage is big. Last year, when he went to Pittsburgh, when he went to Toronto and Montreal for the first time, and he was on that, NHL dog and pony show to start his career. So I'm looking forward to it. And did you get a chance to see the cover of Chicago Magazine for the month of December?
I did. Unbelievable cover. So well thought out. I don't even know how they were able to, how do you even think to do something like that from that far? Just very well thought out. The story was written beautifully as well.
Wayne Drees wrote the story. He's one of my favorites.
He is. He wrote the story years ago of the missing puck from the 2010 Stanley Cup. Because I saw him at Fifth Third was the last month when he was here working on this story, and I was like, hey, big fan of your work, because he was the guy that was hunting down the missing puck of the 2010, the Patrick Kane overtime winner in Philadelphia. So huge fan of his work, and he nailed every single part of this feature.
Yeah. So the title of the article is "No Days Off," referring to Connor, but there's a spin on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They recreate the scene at the Art Institute where Cameron is standing in front of the painting in the Gordie Howe jersey. They do the exact same thing with Connor. Of course, he's wearing a 98 Blackhawks jersey. So they got the right original 6 sweater on for the recreation. But the interview was done before the regular season started. And one of the quotes stood out to me, and it was, quote, "I want to be able to say I found out how good I could possibly be. However good that is, nobody knows, but I want to find out." And I was like, that is him in a nutshell. Like, his sole focus is to see where his talents can take him. And he's going to stop at nothing to explore that possibility, to take it to its biggest heights. And so the no days off, the way, Dre's kind of wrote, like, the last thing he wanted to be doing was sitting in, this room talking to me about himself, and for those of us that are around him on a regular basis, I appreciate when a writer can capture the essence of somebody in just a 2 to 3 hour window that they have with them. They capture something that, we get to see on a daily basis.
Right. Wayne painted a beautiful picture, and I love the way he opened the feature as well, just talking about he doesn't want to be here, and not because not like in an arrogant or cocky way. It's because every minute that he spends not working on his craft, to him feels like he's wasting an opportunity to get better at his craft. And the way he painted the picture was perfect. And just the way, like, he was fidgeting in the chair, like, I love the quote that you mentioned of what Connor said, because it's not, I want to be the greatest of all time, I want to be the greatest goal scorer. He's just saying, I want whatever the greatest version of me is. I want to reach that potential, and then I just want to see where the chips fall if I can hit that. Because you'll see this a lot with players in other sports as well, where they're like I don't want to waste the God-given talent that I had and look back and feeling like, man, I left something on the table. Like, when you retire, you want there to be no regrets, know that you gave it 110%. every single night, whether it was a game, a practice, off-ice preparation. And it was funny too how I can't remember where it was in the story, but they were joking about I think it was Nick Foligno saying like, let's go get McDonald's or whatever. And he's like, no way, like no chance. Like he's so driven even at 18 years old, 19 years old that he doesn't want, he's so conscious of what he puts in his body. There were not a lot of players like that growing up in the today's society. And so the fact that he's so driven both on and off the ice, I'm just as curious as everyone else to see what his ceiling is going to be when his career is all said and done.
Yeah, we're lucky that we get the opportunity to watch it and get a front row seat to it. And hopefully, his return to Vancouver will excite him and will excite this team to give that type of desperate effort that we saw in the third period for glimpses in Seattle. And hopefully we can see it for more of a consistent 60 minutes. The one thing when I was watching and looking at the photo of Bedard recreating the Cameron Ferris Bueller's Day Off pick or scene, I was thinking about like how I tend to like these sports pictures that are outside the arena that we normally see them in. Like I love seeing, Kaner after he knocks LA out and does the heartbreaker sliding on his knees and all that. I love, Connor's, hands extended celly as he makes his way around the United Center. But I really love seeing the player outside of the arena. So to see him at the Art Institute made me think about that David Yarrow photo a couple years ago when Marian Hossa had his jersey retired and his big ceremony, how they got all those guys to recreate the Last Supper on the river. And I mean, that you talk about like an iconic picture. I was just like, wow, that just blew me away. And the other thing, the other one that grabs me, again, it's in the arena, but it's not them doing their work, would be at Wrigley Field when we had the White Sox, the Cubs, and the Blackhawks in the Cup all together on the field at once. So, it was cool. Those are some of the types of things that like down the road, I'm like, you know what, that would be cool in the man cave. I could dig seeing that.
For sure. I also loved, it is funny seeing athletes outside of their environments, because it's almost like seeing a teacher like in the grocery store where you're like, oh, I like outside of school, this is weird seeing. So it's like, oh, you have a life outside of hockey. Like that's, right. So I can only imagine what it took to kind of set up that photo. I also, I'm just remembering this. I thought Wayne did a great job of painting the picture of when Luke ran into Connor in the grocery store and was kind of nudging him with the cart. Like that was kind of more than we've heard. It was kind of just like a funny surface level story, but Connor like explaining how he was like, who the heck is this behind me? And just kind of moving over to the side. I thought it was hilarious. So great story. If you haven't checked it out, I think it's in the Chicago Magazine, but really well done by Wayne
for that. Yeah. So kudos to Wayne Dreys and Chicago Magazine for that. And for Connor for going through it, because they released kind of the photo shoot of how everything went down for the cover and for the Art Institute scene. And that's available too online. So check that out as well. We had that on the pregame show yesterday. Any other parting shots as we exit?
I got some good news. We have our last 9:00 game on Saturday, Hockey in Canada, until I think it's like end of March. So it's like 3 months.
You just made my day, Charlie Roumeliotis.
Yep. The next, and go look at the next road games. It's like noon, 3:00, 6:00, 3:00, 2:00. It's a great stretch. So we got them all out of the way with, but we have one more on Saturday, and then we can kind of breathe for a little bit.
Okay, can we peel back the curtain for just a second?
Yes.
So I play a game now. The CHSN Blackhawks postgame shows are shorter than what they were in the previous network. And so I get in the car and I mean, I make a fast exit. I get to the car and I, of course, put on WGN radio and I listen. So I play the game. Can I get to my exit before Roumeliotis is done with the WGN Blackhawks postgame show.
Wow.
And I've done it once. And let me tell you, I was moving. But I've been getting about 6 minutes shy of my exit as you've been wrapping things up. So I've been keeping tabs on you. You've been doing a great job, but I want to let you know that as you're painting the picture of Rockford Files or the upcoming opponent or going around the league and, playing a clip from one of the other NHL games going on that given night, know that I'm racing against the clock to beat you.
All right. I'll know that on Saturday, and I'll try to delay my exit for as long as possible.
You do you, I'll do me, and let's just hope, the police aren't monitoring me.
By the way, my first segment of the post-game show is always bringing on Troy Murray for a little bit of a game recap. And at the very end, I'm not sure if you caught it, if you were in the car on time to listen to it, but at the beginning of the third period yesterday, right when the puck was getting ready to drop, John Weideman's headset went out. And so Troy was kind of like, oh, did we lose you? Oh, we lost John. So Troy Murray was doing the Blackhawks play-by-play for a full minute, and John's headset came back like 20 seconds after the goal was scored by Seattle. So we were like 20 seconds away from Troy calling a goal.
Wow.
Yeah, and Troy had a lot of fun with it. It was funny the way he was calling it, but also you could tell he was very relieved when John's headset was working again.
And Johnny was relieved. Probably had the flop sweat going.
I told Troy, if that would have happened to me, I would have taken off my headset and given it to John, because I was like,
yeah, that's a good one. No way. It's like when a goalie or a defender loses their stick and you're a forward, and you're like, it's better for me to give it to the defenseman or the goalie than it is for me.
100%. Yep.
There we go.
So that was fun.
And hey, one little nugget as we're pumping our other gigs, we added a new element to the Blackhawks postgame show. So, we have our studios in the atrium at the United Center. So every night we're there, there's either a Bulls game, a Blackhawks game, or a concert. So Tony Granato, he likes to mingle with the people. He can't sit down. He's gotta get us something to drink or get a snack or what have you, talk to somebody. So he goes and checks out these the different concerts. And like a couple weeks ago, Usher was there. He's like, I've never seen Usher. I'd like to check. Go. So we created a new bit. It's Tony Granato's one song concert review. He goes in and just sees one song. Everybody knows the rules. And then he, on a scale of 1 to 5 pucks, he rates that concert. So last night it was Billie Eilish.
Okay.
And he had no idea who Billie was, nor who Finnegan. Is it Finnegan? Finnegan, sure. the brother. So it was but he donned a red sport coat, so he looked like an usher. So there were probably people asking him to take them to their floor seats. But yeah, so look forward to that. CHSN Blackhawks postgame live. Tony Granato's one song concert review.
I need to start paying closer attention to this, because
you got to do your radio gig. You don't worry about that.
We need to start posting them on social media just so I can start seeing the reviews, because I'm curious to hear Tony's how many pucks he's handing out on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I think it was 3.5 or 4 for Billy last night. So
okay, we
will see. That is going to do it for this edition of the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. Toyota, let's go places. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will catch you next time.